welcome everybody. We're back for another episode of Peach Pit. This is one of the more exciting times of the year. We actually have some content or matches underway that we get to talk about, and the more of the real thing rather than just a theoretical what if. We get matches to talk about, and obviously a whole season, the rest of the season to look forward to. So we'll have some week 2 reviews on this show, as well as some week 3 previews. But before we get started, we'll make the usual disclaimer that any views or opinions shared on this show are solely that of the individual contributor and do not reflect the views of Peach Pit, any FRC team, First, Georgia First, South Carolina First, or any of their affiliates and sponsors. So the idea behind the show is to serve as an FRC talk show that focuses primarily on the Peachtree District. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, so don't be surprised if you see us drop some hot takes. Ultimately, we're hoping to provide some entertaining and engaging discussions. With that said, we'll kick off with some introductions. My name is Kellen Hill. I'm currently serving on the Georgia First Planning Committee, as well as a former Team Auto mentor and obviously host of Peach Pit. But David.
David Allred. I'm draft coach and lead technical mentor for FRC 4451 Robots Garage.
I'm Thomas Priego. I am a strategy mentor for Team 4451 Robots Garage.
I'm Brian Carlson from Team 6829 in Net Robotics, and this past week I helped with the bumpers. So.
Oh yeah, I want to get to that story in a second.
Right, we had a problem ironing.
All right, and hi, I'm Anupam Goli. I am the head coach and teacher for Team 9477 Lambda.
Awesome. Well, we'll jump straight into our week 2 review, and I guess it's really cool that we have a couple of our teams on the show for 4451 and 9477. We're both participants in Anderson this weekend. Tell me about the action.
David, you want to start?
Yeah, well, the first action was bumpers. So we put the PSA out about the bumpers and the bumper change rules. Of course, the people that probably need to hear that don't watch our show. Maybe doesn't read the rule set really well. And I think, can't remember, the inspector told me, I can't remember, it was 6 or 8 teams didn't have legal bumpers, I think it was. And I went up to a few of them. You could see where they had their typical bumpers, like corner bumpers or park bumpers, and we didn't have a lot of material just laying around this year. So it was a bumper panic on day 0.
Yeah. Before we get too far into the Anderson review, do you want to talk about who we got as champions and some of our award winners?
Right, we'll do that. So starting off, the
champions
were Walton Robotics, right?
974.
Right, and 343 Metal in Motion, and their partner
3091.
3091, the 100 Scholars.
100 Scholars.
Right. Runners up were the number 7 Alliance of. Can you write those down?
I can pull it up. Our finest alliance was
Hyperdrive.
Hyperdrive 3490.
Was it 1051 Techno Titans?
No, 1051 Technical Terminators.
And 3329 the Wild Bots.
And then they also had a 4th bot with 1319 Flash subbing in for their final match.
That's correct. Yes. Sorry about that. I didn't have all those things writing down. I was trying to remember that off the top of my head, so I'm going back to the routing. Impact Award again this year was won by 3489, Category 5. And Engineering Inspiration won by 8575, the Due Westerners. Those were 2 very strong programs in the state, and they again competing for that at the district championships. Anupam, tell us about your experience, because you ended up with the Rookie All-Star Award.
Yeah. Thank you. So, I guess this is my first time competing at Anderson. First time going to a South Carolina event in years. I went to the Palmetto Regional back in 2013, 2014, when that was a thing. But in general, South Carolina events feel kind of chill compared to some of the Georgia events we've gone to. Maybe it's because I've been on auto and we were kind of more competitively focused, but Georgia events seem to be a little bit more stressful in terms of like just everything going on. South Carolina, Anderson was kind of calm and very relaxed in a sense, but
I'd blame that a lot on how Otto builds their robots and how they break the robots. Maybe you built a more consistent robot over there.
no. We had the same experience here. We were in the pit constantly filling with this darn climber. We shouldn't have, which is because it was only 3 points, and it would have helped in ranking. But we were in the pits constantly, just trying to work on this stupid climber, and but no, it was a fun time. The teams were nice. You know, when we first got there to unload, there was a team with like 10 kids who were ready to help unload every team that came out. And just from that experience, I just have high words of approval, of praise for Anderson and the people who planned that event. So, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, we
Awesome
had our third
experience.
year in that venue, so we've got like the stress of the layout figured out. We know how to set things up physically, and you just work through the kinks of whatever happens. But yeah, we try to focus on what do the teams need.
So, if we want to talk about the actual tournament,
Yeah, coming into quals, it was really evident at Anderson that Walton was just the best robot at the event. No matter how you really look at it, that was just the case. And then it just became a race to see who was going to be their first pick.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it was. I guess the experience is kind of what you would expect if you went to an event with 254 or Citrus Circuits. That's what Walton was to this event. Just hit the ground running, at playing at another level compared to most of the competition. Now, by the end, I think a couple of teams like 343 and Robots Garage and Ramrods were playing in their own right at a high level relative to the competition. But yeah, Walton was just on a different level with their driving and with their ability to just use the field. And it kind of showed itself in quals.
Yeah. They simplified their robot, simplified their strategy, right? Didn't worry about climbing. It's just amp, shoot, right? They just were very, very focused, very simple and effective approach. Didn't shoot very far. They just shot pretty much near the subwoofer or at the subwoofer, and they just had the drive practice to get around anybody that was trying to get in their way. They're very effective pickup, very quick down the field, very lightweight robot. Boom, boom, boom. And if you look at the entirety of Peachtree, there's Walton and then kind of everybody else over here right now in terms of cycling. We got some catch up work.
Yeah, I was looking at their qual schedule here. I did notice that they lost a match, but after clicking on the match, it looks like they handed out about 30 penalty points to the other alliance for the other alliance to get out a 14-point win.
Yes, exactly.
So
yeah, they were blowing it out. But
yep.
Anupam mentioned Ramrod's 63, 66. They their story was they actually finished the robot early, right? they had driver practice, so they were a very effective cycler there, one of the top cyclers, and ended up being our alliance captain. Really, really nice machine.
I was kind of impressed by both impressed and well, I'll talk about what was impressive about it. There were a lot of attempts at multi-piece autonomous modes.
But
You don't typically see that early, like in the first weeks of competition in the past at Peachtree. So I think that's just a testament to how much stronger region's gotten in terms of programming ability. Though many of the multi-node autons were not super successful. They missed a lot, but that's kind of what made the teams stand out. That's what spread the tiers out. Was in this game, autonomous is just so valuable compared to a teleop shot that if you can get a multi-piece autonomous hitting every single time, that is going to be what pushes you to victory most often.
So, working as an alliance in qualifications, that's something you're going to have to decide what you want to do, what you want to be. If you want to run your auton to the detriment, possibly the detriment of your alliance, if somebody else has a solid multi-piece, then do so. But that lead in coming out of auto is a very nice feeling.
We got to run the stats on this, but I would wager that most of the time, like 80% of the time at least, 75% of the time at least, that the team that had a lead in autonomous was the one to win the match.
Yeah, and the key that we just talked about was the penalty points. That was the quickest catch-up tool. There was quite a few penalties out there.
Yeah,
I think as we go, we're going to see some more intelligent play for amp and speaker cycles. That's playing that game really, really intelligently is going to be your only other hope to catch up as the season goes on.
But something that I notice and I think is as the season goes on and the events get more and more competitive, the matches where you have wide auton discrepancies will shrink. Because as you go further on, those midline autons will be more prevalent and then begin to become contested. And then the close autons are more likely to actually work or have or to exist. So I think as you go on, teleop will be more and more a decider, but for these early events, it's definitely who has the autons and who doesn't.
Yeah. And
So-
if you sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I didn't get a chance to watch Anderson, but I was looking at Dalton. We'll get details there. But the interesting thing that I saw there is that if you scored 75 points on your alliance, you were winning 70. If you scored 25 points on your alliance, you would win 75% of the matches, right? And that was key.
You scored 25 points solo?
Nope. If your alliance scored 25 points, looking at like day one,
Okay.
you had a 75% chance of winning, right? So
Right.
getting that extra note and getting 10 instead of 5, getting everybody to cross, that auton lead coming out of there made you more than likely going to win that match.
Right. Well, yeah. So, I guess the way I looked at it, in our preview show was, I thought when the average robot would be, like in the 14 range. At Anderson, it was just above 11, so with 33-point average game, and at Dalton, I think it was 9 per robot for 27-point game.
So
it was much lower than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And and Alton is a big part of that. There's no big end game to kind of catch up unless you do that crazy trap stuff.
right.
Yeah, climbing is interesting this year in that it's sometimes more worth it to just stay out shooting than go and hang for the 3 points.
And that's what I told in several matches. What I told our driver was like, it's not even worth it to park if you can try and get a last minute shot off, because the park itself is only 1 point, right? And you can get 2 for a speaker shot. So it's more advantageous to try and get that last minute shot off and score that.
And I also thought that the floor would be raised some compared to where it was at. But then again, if you look at our preseason predictions as far as traps and everything else, this is a more challenging game than we thought, and there was a lot of complexities to it, even though it looks simple.
I think we'll see a lot of improvement for shooting through the season. Amping, I think, is one of those things you need a mechanism for, but I think there are a handful of robots near the top that are already super proficient at it. Trapping is a mechanism you don't want to really added, except for maybe a couple teams if they have the right architecture already for it. But otherwise, climbing's only really big deal is in quals, where if your alliance as a whole can get together and climb, that you have any shot at that the harmony RP, and any shot at ranking any higher as a result of it.
Called right. It's the ensemble. Harmony is when you climb two on the chain, but
Yeah.
I'm still working on it.
Right?
Speaking of which, I don't think there was any successful or on a harmony attempt at Anderson. Were there any attempts?
I remember
in
some
the-
attempts. I don't remember any successful ones. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I think there's a component RPR for that. I'm
pretty sure there weren't any.
That's such a long list for these. Bonus point.
So going into playoffs at Anderson, alliance selection I feel like was very standard. I think they went a little bit longer than you typically see out of South Carolina. But
it was a little longer, but not too bad.
Yeah, and I think most of the picks were fine. It looks like teams did their scouting, did their homework. Kind of a cool story is, with all the interpicking, well, there were two rookie captains, my team and 9561, the Dawson Dino Nuggets, and kind of a cool story about them. So they've got like 12 kids total, and I think 10 of them came to the event. They did not have a functioning robot coming into the event. They just had a chassis that still needed to get wired up properly and get bumpers on it. But they got that moving, and they mounted a structure that we gave to them. It was our prototype kitbot structure, and they got their shooter on it. They didn't shoot a shot, but their alliance partners helped them get them code. They were an alliance captain just through the luck of the fate of the numbers, but they were not prepared for it. We did help them by helping give them some of the teams from our list, and then they were able to pick another team that was really good, and they actually made it to the third round of playoffs. So, very inspiring rookie story there.
Yeah, and then one last rookie story. There was 3 rookies there, right? 2 alliance captain rookies, and then our South Carolina rookie ended up playing on our alliance. There were several teams. That's 9571 Patriot Prime out of Pottersville, and several teams in the upstate came together to get them up and running before the event. So they came to our shop and practiced and whatnot, and got the shooter working before they showed up. And so we picked them because they were, they were fairly good driving even for a rookie team, right? So another cute story about that was that the driver came up to me on Saturday morning and says, "Man, there are a lot of people working on their robots. What do we do?" I said, "Well, I guess charge your batteries and relax." Because they were making the modifications. They're playing basically, the kit bot from First, and I do want to commend First again on doing that, because that baseline product was effective. It was very effective. In fact, I saw in a couple of games they played feeder robot with that thing. They go to midfield and shoot over the stage. But anyway,
they ended up winning the Rookie Inspiration Award as well.
Yes, they did.
9571.
Yes, they did.
I guess a little bit more about playoffs. The 1 seed breezed through the bracket. We had some interesting results. The 7 seed was the one that made it to finals. They pulled off quite a few upsets to get there. But in the finals, they just couldn't keep up. The combination of 2974 and 343 was just too potent.
Part of that that number 7 Alliance run was, Viper Drive was shooting very good, and 1051 was just already a tall robot because they had trapped architecture. So in Swerve Drive, they were very effective defending people in front of the subwoofer. Our stats showed that there were not that many robots that didn't shoot at the subwoofer. Almost every team there that was shooting shot there. So you park a good experienced driver in front of that thing, you can play some shutdown D, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of shutdown D, and to move us along, we really saw in Elims at the Dalton event some shutdown D as teams 1746, 6919, and 4701 went through and ended up winning the event against the finalists 4112, 6340, and 9500. Which were the fourth seed.
So that was an interesting matchup in the finals too, because that fourth seed was actually the ones to kick the 2 seed down to the lower bracket, who then fought back. I think had to beat then the 1 seed in order to pop back into the finals matchup. So it was an interesting matchup to see.
So who was
a loss?
The shutdown.
The D? 1 seed.
Who was the D?
What was that?
Who was
4701 ended up having a cardboard sheet put on their robot with a smiley face on it.
The smiley face.
Smiley face.
Yeah, some nice frowny eyebrows on it, but it was so 4701's robot was modified for that eliminations experience. They did have a kind of mechanism going up and down during the match normally for quals, that they'd be able to shoot a few notes a match. But the Alliance wound up removing that in order to place this full vertical cardboard sheet on the robot. But they had a well-driven swerve drive, and like David said, they just parked right in front of that subwoofer. It was incredibly noticeable, and we'll get for a bit more structure to our Dalton review here. Well, for how the quals were playing, it was incredibly noticeable that everybody was shooting on the subwoofer. There were, I think I saw 6919, 1683, I think was another that attempted it, but just a few robots that really made any kind of attempt to shoot from a protected zone or any further away from the speaker, for what would be more realistic shots if you're playing with a subwoofer robot, or if that's the subwoofer shots being so easily defended that you have to start practicing that in quals. But we saw some teams start picking up defense. 4026 was one of those that played some really ferocious defense with their swerve drive. 9500 wound up having an issue with the ball screw on their mechanism for dropping bearings all over the field and not having a backup. So they swapped to just drivetrain defense, and wound up making a run as finalists as that defensive bot for the 4th seed, to cause some chaos. But I believe in the last match of the day, at least, they had a connection issue of some sort that they wound up sitting on the field for most of the match. But for the third bot on both the winning alliance and the runner-up, being strictly defense, no assisting of any sort, that the weight was really on the captain and the first pick's shoulders to really carry the note scoring, instead of playing any assist strategy, which is something I'm very curious for the season, is what the depth of the competition looks like, and if there are assist bots really on the table to be effective enough to play that strategy rather than playing defense as much. Because again, there were so many subwoofer shots. You could park a robot right there, and the offensive output would just crater for the other alliance, because that's the only shot they were used to, and you couldn't really push them out of the way for being a well-driven swerve drive.
Yep.
And what surprises me a lot is that more alliances didn't try and play defense at Dalton, just seeing as almost all of the robots were reliant on that subwoofer shot, and the fact that a lot less teams did not. There was only really that one alliance that made that concerted effort to that made that concerted effort to have a defender robot where everyone else just tried to play triple O was surprising.
Yeah, it was interesting because 4026 wound up being a first round pick by the number 6 alliance, just for, I believe, was more strictly a defense related role, to be valued that high, for that proficiency. But yeah, I'm excited to see when, for a mix of Dalton and Anderson. What I've only watched a couple of matches from 2974, but their ability to get to that subwoofer shot, even if a defender is there, as well as to shoot from anywhere else in that close zone, seems to far exceed anything I saw at Dalton for a robot to get into that spot and still make a shot, regardless of if a defender's there or not. So I think that's another important capability robots are going to need to work on, is getting to that spot and shooting, regardless of if a defender's there, to make sure you're putting up points, what defense or no.
Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed, I was able to watch Friday and Saturday. I was busy and I couldn't watch much. But it was pointed out at Walton and how they came ready to drive, right? And how driving really excelled them. I happened to, by chance of my work schedule and what was on when I could watch, I happened to see several matches from of Otto, and the driving there helped. I'm pretty sure helped propel them to where they're at. There were several matches where they were getting game pieces and being a field aware. Initially getting the auton pieces that weren't scored on the near line, but they were getting ones on the center line several seconds, half minute into the match, and they were getting ones that are outside the source on the far side, by the amp on the other opposing alliance. And so all those things gave them a congestion-free cycle, because when you got 3 bots trying to get to the same source, when they would go over there, there'd be some bots that are a little slower, causing congestion. And so that smart cycling saves you time and just gives you more cycles.
Yeah, they get a benefit of an Einstein driver returning from last year. The full drive team is returning from last year. So I think only the main driver is a senior, and then the other 2 are juniors this year even. So they've got a lot of consistency there. They do have a new drive coach, who Michael Aguilar stepped into that role as a mentor for filling my shoes. But he's a top-notch strategy thinker. So he seemed to do a really good job at communicating with the alliance as well as with Parker, just to keep those eyeballs open and things functioning as an alliance. So it's cool to see him step into that role. But,
out of curiosity, 9480, were they a kit bot? Gear bearers?
I can't recall off the top of my head. I do not believe so.
They are a rookie, because one of the things I thought would happen would there would be a kit bot that would be in the top 8, and Anupam's team came that close, ranked 9, but we do have a rookie 9480, and I was curious, ranked 8 at Dalton, if they were a kit bot.
See their match real quick. I'll get that,
because I think it's a testament, David, like you said, this kit bot and what it could do really makes teams that previously would struggle at competitions to be very effective.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And a one kit bot at our event, I can't remember the number, that had modified it with the every bot amp mechanism, not the climber part, but the amper. That little motor grabber thing.
Gotcha. Well, some other general conversation for Dalton, as far as the competitiveness of the event. It was quite crowded at the top. Nobody was head and shoulders above. 1102 wound up popping into the 1 seed. They had a remarkable amount of inconsistency issues through quals, and still managed to get that 1 seed. Once they got those inconsistencies sorted out, I think for bypassing a switch in their wiring, wound up turning into a really consistent then subwoofer and amp robot. So they were performance-wise, a deserving number 1 seed. So it's cool to see them pop into that role. They did select Team 7451, the Avengers, as their first pick. Was a great robot. And speaking of, so 7451 also won our Impact Award, Engineering Inspiration by 1746. And Rookie All-Stars was 9480. As mentioned, the Gear Bears. It's so hard to pronounce. My brain wants to say Care Bears. But
Oh, God.
the Gear Bears. So awesome shout out to those teams. But speaking of getting into the alliance makeups, something's in the water in Forsyth County this year. Just doing a quick check of, let's see, I think there are 6 Forsyth County teams this year, which I think is the most there have ever been. Some schools have kind of gone in and out, but of those 6 robots, 5 of them were in the top 9 spots in their events. So you had a 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th spot at the Dalton event were all Forsyth County teams. Lambda Robotics was 9th over at Anderson. 6944 West Forsyth had their most ambitious mechanically built robot so far. I think they've got some mechanical kinks to work through. So not quite up there for the seedings, but still a really, really well-rounded out Forsyth County group of robots. But some of the best robots I've ever seen out of 4112 and 7451. Really, really putting on strong performances, making runs as the number 1 overall pick, representatives on both the finalists and championship alliances. It was just a really impressive showing from those Forsyth County teams. But again, for performance base, you had a lot of robots up there in the top of the pack. Some set up themselves apart with stronger autonomous modes. I think 4112 and 7451 were a couple of the top contenders there for having anything more of a 3 or 4 piece game piece auton. But you had 6919 was doing really well. 1746 and 1102 were some, and at 4112 and 7451 were all some of the top amp robots. So they were able to play that strategy to get some more of the amped speaker note shots going. So that's why they kind of rose to the top of the pack. But I think when it came down to playoffs, you were really looking at the thing that was going to set you apart was how really from that number two alliance was that defense that was just shutting down the other team's offense, as well as just the practice routine of amping and speaker shots at the same time. It was really impressive watching. I think 1746 practiced it a bit through quals as well as some others, of when they would miss a shot either in the speaker or the amp, they would just drop it and leave it there and go full field to grab another one, because that game piece could very easily then be a second shot in the speaker while it was amped. So it was kind of in a safe spot just for teams not coming over in that corner to steal it. But it was some really impressive strategy to see from those top alliances and those top teams on that coordination. So I think that's something we're going to see further developed as the season goes.
And something else that I noticed, speaking on the strategy wise, was just having teams, how, the winning strategy at Dalton was a ferrying strategy where Otto was kind of, even though there were 2 offensive robots, they were putting a lot of that eggs in facilitating 6919 scoring as many notes as possible during their amp cycle, while they were just getting the notes there to make sure the amp happened as fast as possible. And then I really expect that to be what at States our third bots end up doing.
Yeah, once that depth of selection opens up quite a bit at a 50-team event, I think, like you said, it's going to open up a lot of options on how your alliance is operating as a whole.
So did Otto play a shooter feeder, or they drove it down there?
It depended on the match. They would kind of get to the I'm blanking on the name of it. That front third of the field, and kind of drop it in that corner. They wouldn't worry too much about staying as far back as possible, but they would just make sure that it was in a safe corner by the amp.
Okay, gotcha. Just kind of get it towards that amp. Yeah, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's why I think this game will I don't think it'll come to like one way to play it, even as the season goes on. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it looks like there's just a couple different ways to go.
Yep. So, and one way to play it, I think we talked about it previously, is there was a match where Otto went and scored an amp for the cooperation bonus at the first 45 seconds, and the MC was unsure why that just happened, but
We're cooperating with ourselves,
right?
If that person can press a button,
Right? Help everybody, right? It's good for them, good for you.
So,
Yeah,
like,
scoring needing to score 3 less notes in that during the match is a huge boon in trying to get that RP there.
kind of in contrast to last year, where the game kind of evolved into the one strategy of just racing as fast as possible from one corner of the field to the other.
yeah,
This game lends itself to a lot more variety in strategies and a lot more variety of approaches, right?
that's what I
Because
like.
I think defense is still going to be a viable strategy even in district champs.
Yep.
Depending on where you defend, you can defend at the subwoofer, you can defend at the source. Source defense was quite effective in the playoffs at Anderson and even in the qualification matches. But you could also, instead of playing 2 offense 1D, you could play 2 offense 1 support, having a fairy bot or a bot to sit there and shuttle notes across. So that's what's exciting about this game. It's like last year, it was mainly about how fast you can cycle. This year, it's about how can you play this game strategically, and how can you get the most out of your alliance.
There were some alliances last year that pulled off an assist type game by just shoving as many cubes into the zone as possible. That really took off more at champs than anything. But yeah, the assist game as well as defense are just huge differences compared to last year on how this game's going to evolve. But I think if anything, that really helps out higher seeds at district champs because they're going to have some more choices when it comes around to their third bot in alliance selections instead of who's the best offensive robot left instead of, all right, who's an offense robot who can assist, who can play defense. You get a few more options at those picks later in that alliance selections deeper in the season.
I would say that because of the variety of strategic play in this game, your lower seeds at district champs at least will have a much better chance because they can get those back-to-back picks. You can get the best defense bot out there in the game at that 6, 7, or 8 spot, or you can get the best shooter or the best remaining shooters, 2 of the best remaining shooters, and have one play shuttle or one cycle off between shuttling and scoring. So, I would say, and this is jumping ahead, but at the higher levels of play, I think you might see a much more contested playoff bracket at district champs.
Yep.
But that's jumping ahead.
Yeah, speaking of jumping ahead, let's take a peek at the Gwinnett event coming up this weekend, where we have an off week for South Carolina as they wait for their week 4 event or week 5 event. Sorry, to take. No, sorry, it is week 4. I'm wrong. But yeah, for Gwinnett, we have a couple of defending champions. I think returning to the event in 1771. And 4188, I think, will both be there. Will 2415 be there? Let's see. Yeah, so we have the full defending championship alliance will be at Gwinnett, which is exciting to see. But I think we did our count, and I think, David, you said it wound up being 8 teams doing the back-to-back.
Yeah, that have already played week 2. The Techno Titans and Auto being it was probably the top 2, and then the mechanisms right behind them.
Gosh, yeah, and we got Lambda Robotics as well for another.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you've got the Alliance Captain Lambda, the rookie All-Star guys, and then and they're adding features and gonna blow it out.
Yep, but it looks like out of a
it helps, right? I mean, it's no joke.
They were playing a smart game from what it looked like for getting their shot in when they could and playing
Oh, yeah.
an assist game that was very effective. But yeah, it looks like our Gwinnett field is 31 teams, which is still a solid number. But for 8 of those being returning teams, I think those teams are going to have a significant edge on the competition to see how the game has played out thus far, and really put those practices into use to get ahead as early as they can in quals until other teams start picking up those strategies.
I'm really looking forward to this one. This one's going to be a pretty spicy event.
Yeah, I want to see what 1771 brings to the table, and I also want to see
It'll be
what
I'm sorry.
last year 4509 came out of the gate strong, and
Yes.
I want to see what they bring this year after kind of really pushing the envelope last year.
Yeah, some other strong contenders we have from their last year's performance that we've yet to see are then 1261, 4188, 4509 as Anupam mentioned, and 6829 Ignite Robotics. Brian, how are you feeling about this Gwinnett event?
They've got wrapped. It's wrapped. It's in a wrap.
Yeah. I'll let you know when we get finished, right?
You're on the hot seat.
Right. When it's all over, I'll let you know. Yeah. So this year we have 14 rookies on a 20-person team. So we're doing a lot of great hands-on training, doing some really good work. There's always things you want. We have a roadmap, a bunch of stuff we want to get to, right? But the reality is, you got to sort of focus in on what you're going to do. We went to DE today, had some gremlins and fixed those. I think we had a buck boost issue or something like that. So, we'll get there. Last year we were rusty our first match, I think, our first competition, and trying to do as best as we can with what we have, but we'll see how we do.
You're gonna win it. You're gonna win it. Right.
The students are doing a great job, and a lot of the engagement. Some of the rookies that are working on different subsystems and everything else. It's just going a little slower. The bots, is coming along well. It's just when you have less. Last year we were driving for several weeks. This year we'll be in a different position. So, I think it's gonna be a fun event. There are a lot of teams there that are all sort of in that same boat. I sort of see North Gwinnett as sort of expecting them to always sort of they swing for the home run, and they may not hit it their first competition, but they usually come pretty strong even in that. Last year winning, coming from like the 2 seed it was. And so you got a lot of good teams there that I think are all going to watch out as you go through the day one and see what they figure out, especially the teams that are playing for the first time. Right. So.
Yeah. And with that said, I'd emphasize to all teams, keep an eye on district points. They obviously all count this early in the season.
Yep.
I know we were in a weird spot with 1746 last year where we struggled a bit through our district events, got into district champs, but put ourselves in a spot where we literally had to outright win the event in order to get to world champs, and managed to hit a home run there. But I think at this point of the season, Otto already has pretty much as many district points as they did through both of their events last year. So they're off to a much better start. But this reminds me of, I think, the advice David mentioned last week, and I've heard again and again through FRC experiences: play with the robot you have, not the robot you wanted to have.
Yep.
But
yeah, and I'm also I expect some more driver improvement out of Otto coming in back-to-back weeks and driving so well last week. So I think Otto could turn in another strong performance there again. and it might be very scary if you look at 1771 and 1746 going together, if they're able to feed that one, and if 1771 comes in where we usually are, where they have a little quirks but they get it going, they could be pretty strong.
I really think that Otto's benefiting a lot from, similar to how Techno Titans benefited from last year, just being have a simple robot that's done early and have your first two have your early events. So it'll be interesting to see how they progress and grow throughout the season as it comes to district champs. But I definitely think they're gonna come in swinging and should be one of the teams to beat coming into Gwinnett.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They built a tall bot, right? It was conscious to do that, to do trap, or not to trap, to do amp, right? They found their role and they're like, we're going to take this and we're just going to execute, right? They brought their bot that they designed, right? Because they chose something that they could get done, get time on it, and just execute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting in seeing how their game evolves. I think from what I've heard, they're looking at tweaking their intake. They were scooting some game pieces away from their front of the robot instead of kind of the touch it, own it you'd like to see. So let's see when those improvements might make it onto the robot. But yeah, some room for improvement there, which is going to get them any closer to that Walton throughput that I think everybody's going to be chasing. I think this is very similar to 2019 for how the season's starting out, for Walton just being that head and shoulders above everybody else, and everybody kind of, well, we'll see if we can get to anywhere close to the same level or not. But
right. So you mentioned something about the carpet. So how did that impact the gameplay and everything? And I had heard previously that they were having to in other parts of other districts and regionals of having to iron down the gaffer's tape to get the stick. How was that?
Okay, so I talked to the FTAs about that. So what happened was last year they said we're going to have new carpet, and I think they tested it at an off-season event and it did not work. So they found a different source for the carpet, and I could not tell the difference between this carpet and any other previous year. It looked
okay. All right, I heard some stuff. I wasn't sure.
PSA for everybody out there.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say from what I saw, it did seem a little bit slicker than the carpet, the old carpet. Like we've got a roll of the old carpet in our workshop and in our pit, and it did seem a little bit slicker. But yeah, that's what I've also heard from other events around, is that it is a little bit slicker and notes have a easier time sliding.
Well, I think that's a factor of a new note. I mean, new note in our shop slides like a hockey puck as well. I mean, it's
that and fresh carpet too can be
fresh carpet.
Another contributor.
Even with the dirtied up carpet, those fresh notes would slide a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looked like air hockey out there for kicking those things, and they just kind of glide across.
You hit it with the corner of the swerve or corner of the bumper or the swerve, and it just goes flying. And their notes to me didn't seem to get as roughed up as the ones I have back at my shop. Maybe because of the high volume of notes they had, but they were pretty slick the whole competition. made it a little challenging to if you hit it and ran away with it. So teams that built with the swerve that built the full intake across the inside or have an over the bumper that's full width are probably benefiting from that design based on slick notes.
Yep. Important tweaks to be making to improve that consistency of intake, because that's going to have a big impact on that cycle time.
So people that haven't played yet, if you chose that wide design that goes outside the swerve modules, good choice.
All right. With that Gwinnett preview underway, I guess I'd be curious for how the game's going to move going forward. And I guess this is a little bit of Gwinnett for being a future event. But I guess for what went as expected or what didn't, any thoughts on the state of the crescendo?
I mean, we kind of hit on it before, but there's multiple ways to play this game. You can play defense. You can have you can have a third bot play defense. Sort. If there are a lot of subwoofer shots, subwoofer defense is very effective. Everybody has to get game pieces from the source though, and source defense is highly effective. I think it's just because like if you don't practice with a full field, you're not gonna, or if you don't get any practice to a field, it's going to be very difficult for a driver to have the confidence to go all the way around the opponent's stage because the potential to get a penalty doing that is much higher. So one robot can effectively block access to the source just by sitting there. So it's a little bit frustrating that sources can't or nodes can't be introduced any other way. But I expect that source defense to be a bigger thing. And that's where Walton has that advantage of being able to go under the stage. So a robot guarding the source is not a deterrent for them. Some strategies to counter that would be, and I think this is going to take off more as in later weeks, is playing that feeder bot role, just having a robot sit at the source and launch notes. You can't go from wing to wing; that's a penalty. And we had to clarify this because we played this role a few times. You can go from the neutral mid zone to your wing, or you can go from the opponent's wing to the middle zone. Either way, you're shortening the cycle time of any of your teammates, and you're effectively nullifying that source defender if there's a source defender.
The other thing to sort of tag on to that about having to clarify, make sure that everyone's on the same sheet of music as far as what you could do with those notes and.
Ain't see the music?
I like it, Brian.
All right, Brian.
What?
I call that same sheet.
What?
All right.
Oh, okay. There were several matches in elims where there were 30, 35 penalty points. Make sure your drivers know what those rules are because even though there's some big ranges, sometimes those impact it, but it's very easy for you to play what you think's effective defense and then lose the match because of it.
Mm-hmm.
5, everyone's an amp shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'm curious about going forward is ranking points. I think those, let's see, I'm going to get them mixed up again. The melody is I think that RP is going to start increasing in its frequency, especially as teams start getting their second play in. But the ensemble, that's going to be, I think, the difference maker as this season stretches out a little bit. We'll see how big of an impact it has later in the season, but it seems pretty scarce. I think the majority of the times that happened at Dalton was just because of a penalty of somebody touching the stage and getting a touch by a defender. But I don't believe I think there may have been a scarce one of those that actually happened from a couple of climbing robots, and but if it did happen, it would have been pretty scarce, as well as the amount of trap robots we've seen so far. So I'm curious on how that one's going to affect the season as we keep going. But,
yeah, we thought originally that you'd see a trap RP at Gwinnett, and not so sure nowadays.
I think you will.
Yeah, I've heard things about 1771.
I have a feeling. You're gonna see.
Has anyone seen what 4188's been up to?
I have not. No.
No.
They've been out
And oddly silent.
Awfully silent. Yeah.
Yeah. Another team that has a full field to practice with.
Mm-hmm.
That helps.
It does.
Yeah, some big question marks as we head into Gwinnett. Any other thoughts before we start getting the show wrapped up? I know we had some Thomas's donut shop bets from earlier in the season.
Let's review.
All right, so starting from where we started off, we had a high score week 2. We had Brian at 93, David at 93.5, Anupam somewhere in the 80s, and myself at 90. After doing a quick review just before the show, I'll give myself a little pat on the shoulder for nailing it right at 90. But I think that was only because of a healthy amount of penalty points in what I believe was the final match at Anderson, where the number 1 alliance wound up scoring 90 points to 29 points. And I believe there were 20 points in penalties in that.
It makes us all look better, though, right? We're all close.
And I think I was a little high on the average score. But
what was the high unpenalized? Like probably
I
around,
have no idea.
Around 60, 70?
I think it was 70s.
In quals, it was 72,
72, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know about playoffs, but quals was 72.
Playoffs was 76 with the Walton Alliance. And finals one, they scored 76.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Next one was what is the highest amount of notes a robot will score in Auton for week 2? We had Anupam and Brian at 3s and David and myself at 4s.
And two robots pulled off a 4 down in Dalton, right?
Yeah, we had some 4s show up.
And then Walton also had a 4-piece
yeah.
with their preload and then the 3 close.
I don't think they played the 3 close. They only played 2 of the 3 close.
Yeah.
So they did a 3-piece. They didn't have a 4.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting them to have. I think I was expecting it. I didn't see all their matches, but I don't think they did a 4, but they did 3s.
So those were a couple of ones we, I think, added on to our preview show last week. But as for, I think, some earlier questions we had asked in the season, we had how many times will the trap get scored? And I think this was through the entire district season. Which
we're off to a start.
Yeah, we've been up and down on the expectations on this one. I think we thought we lowballed it, then we thought we were way low, and then we thought we were way high. And this, but I had a 25, Anupam had a 12, Brian had a 45, David at a 150, and Thomas at a 175. I think we're seeing how those numbers have played out already. Pretty scarce trap shots so far. Two is our. But I expect those numbers to go up. But
in my defense, we didn't even have it programmed until we got there.
Better late than never. Yeah.
Better late than never. We got 2, and we missed one. We attempted 3, got 2 of the 3.
Yeah, I think Kellen's looking pretty good, and I have an outside shot. I think we'll go above 12.
Yeah, I think so. By district champs.
We'll
see what 1771 has, right? Because that's the one that we really haven't seen yet.
Well, I guess that would be the struggle too, is if they're doing it 3 times a match, that trap number goes up quite a bit. On a match-to-match basis.
And 1051 and 343 have the architecture, but can't remember. I think they had both robots attempted. I can't remember.
Something to keep our eyes on. How early in the season will we see an ensemble? We had a couple of week 3s, 1 week 3 with Anupam and the rest of us at week 2s. I'm trying to recall.
I had an ensemble, an uncivilized ensemble with the trap and 1319 climbed with us.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to remember if we had a legitimate one or not at Dalton.
1746 got one with the penalty.
Yeah, that was pretty. That was
great.
Me shaking my finger at that 1746 drive team after that match, because number one, they barely showed up to it because they had broken the chain right before the match and just barely put the robot on. But then they get a note stuck in their robot, so swap to playing defense the entire time. But they wind up causing some havoc on defense. But in the last 30 seconds, the other alliance had a defender right next to the stage, and they very smartly tucked themselves right in on that stage and got some contact and drew a third RP. So they went very quickly from missing a match and potentially getting 0 RP to being in the match and getting 3 RP that helped out with their ranking points. So, but all right, so let's see. How early in the season will we see a Melody?
I think we all got that one wrong.
So yeah, we had
Yes.
Anupam with a week 3. Well, no, sorry, I'm reading this one wrong. Brian at week 4, David, Anupam, and myself at week 3, and then Thomas with district champs. So
Who got it first? Anderson or Dalton?
I think Anderson did because Walton got it in their first match.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
I
He
think
could solo it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the most impressive thing right
But
there.
they didn't
I think
get
we
in
had
their
a number
first
of
match, they
robots
got in their
that could get
second
into.
one.
We had a number of robots that could get into like the lowish teens, but nobody was really that confident in getting it themselves unless they had the competition to help out. But let's see. So we've some good work there by those teams. And then when will we see the first 4 RP match take place? So we have a couple of district champs with David and Thomas, Anupam and Brian week 4, and then myself week 5. We've come close on this one. Whether they were legitimate ones or not, or penalty-induced ones, winds up being the question. But I think Anderson had a pretty close one, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
Yep.
we did.
Yeah, and I think this one should be earned, not penalty, right? A
Yeah.
true 4 RP.
True 4. Yeah. Give me a true 4, not that fake 4.
But yeah, I imagine this will happen a little earlier than a lot of our predictions. I think it's still going to be scarce, but I think maybe a little earlier than we expected.
Yeah, it could happen at Gwinnett.
Right.
But, all right, so then all in all, not too shabby on our predictions. Obviously, we had a pretty broad array of guesses, but not too shabby. But all right. Any other thoughts before we get the show wrapped up?
That'll do it for me.
We got, what, 5 days until the Gwinnett for us?
Yep.
Yeah, keep making those improvements. Get all that drive practice you can. Break your robot at your shop, not at the event.
And
But,
find
yeah,
out
all those.
if your teams have bumpers that are legal.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing. I saw this at least 2 or 3 times at Anderson. Hits against the driver station wall by robots causing laptops to crash and driver stations to pop off.
That's true, especially right by the source.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Put some Velcro on your driver station console, or build a little driver station console and put Velcro on it, because all the driver stations have Velcro there for you to put it on.
Good point.
It does suck that this field doesn't absorb that impact and it transfers it into your driver station, but prepare yourself.
Yeah, it gets kind of frisky right by the source.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the practice fields. I'm glad that this year First has April tags for those. And
I was not given any.
No, yeah, we have to print them out ourselves.
I
Yeah.
printed them out myself for
right. But looking at the setups for Anderson and Dalton, and I expect the same with Gwinnett, and having a nice layout where you can go there and actually work on what you need to do and not have problems with other tags conflicting.
PSA for the April tag folks, right? The speaker echo tags are crap. Absolute crap.
Yeah.
They're on
There's
like 1/8 inch flexible plastic, and that's what they're mounted on, and so they move like this. It's a lot of fun. So we took them out of our odometry. We can aim at them, right? Aim X, turn to aim. But if you're trying to use those for odometry, don't.
Yeah, I'd be curious what Walton wound up doing with that. If they had if those weren't part of their strategy, how are they as accurate as they were?
Into the field, grabbed the note, drove back, jammed it up against the subwoofer, and went, poof. What vision do you need?
That helps, yeah.
Well, I know what vision. The driver's vision.
The driver's vision is the vision they used.
Apparently, that's got some machine learning behind it.
Yeah. pay you 0. So anyway, if you're getting fancy with your odometry, I would not count on those speakers giving you a good number. Just PSA.
All
That
right.
was one of the.
Well,
that was
I'll be
one
in. I'll be at Gwinnett. I'll be at Gwinnett inspecting for my first time, so I'm looking forward to that. But looking forward to seeing all the robots there. I'll be also coordinating the practice field that we'll have at Gwinnett too.
Kellen, do me a favor when you're inspecting. Don't quiz teams, especially rookie teams, on the rules. Yeah.
Okay.
Make inspection as easy as possible, especially for rookies.
Did our guys quiz you?
No.
Yeah, all right.
Inspection at Anderson was amazing. It was stress-free. They were just like, you got this, you got this, you got this. Show me your bumpers. Show me your battery.
Yep.
Good. Very, very stress-free.
I'll have my set of calipers out to check Brian's bumper numbers. That's what that's my plan.
All right. So show me in the rules where the position
Brian.
is able to fit in 2 round noodles and the
just pushing buttons.
yeah.
All right.
So Brian, Kellen, and I will be there at Gwinnett. Say hi. David, you should come over and spectate at least one day.
I might try that.
Thomas, you go to make it?
Work in school, Brian. Work in school.
It's on a Saturday and Sunday.
That's when I work.
Yeah. Well,
One or the
Thomas is
other,
over
yeah.
here hustling.
Yeah.
You got to respect that.
Who knows? You come, people may bring donuts.
Oh, my work is somewhat close by. You just bring work there.
I was told by a representative of 1683 is that there's an expectation that they be delivered donuts in order for your Thomas's Donut Shop logo to be running on that display that they've got set up in their pit.
So I will plug one thing. Load in on Friday night. Pits close, I think, at 9. There we will be doing our burgers and bots for mentors that want to get together, socialize, and talk and meet other people in the area. We're going to be doing it at Taco Mac in Lawrenceville. And if you catch me, I'll leave addresses at our pit. So if you want to come to tonight's pit, basically go out, socialize, build some relationships. So when you need some help, you got somebody to reach out to and you don't feel like you're on an island by yourself.
Correction, Brian, and hopefully this doesn't put a damper on mentor availability, but pits are open from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Friday for load-in and pits. So
That might be a late night.
All right. Well, why are you going so late this time?
Well, to give teams more time to get inspected or use the practice field.
Oh, that's right.
There's all kinds of stuff you can do on Friday night.
We have test matches, right?
Test matches, right?
Yeah. How about breakfast and bots?
There you go. Yeah.
How did those go, by the way, at Dalton?
We struggled at Dalton. We had a bad access point on the field, so our FTA crew was struggling to get that diagnosis. But we did wind up pivoting. So instead of running actual test matches, we were giving teams 15-minute calibration periods where they could drive on the field and calibrate by either climbing or shooting on the speaker, whatever they wanted to do to get them some time with the real elements. But that should go any better at Gwinnett now that issue is sorted out.
Yeah, Anderson, I didn't do a practice or test match day 1, but day 2, they were just trying to get every single team to get connected to the field, which was nice. So they went around actually at the end of day 1 scheduling teams, asking them, hey, you haven't been to a test match yet. Here are the time slots. We need to see you and make sure you can connect to the field, which I thought was very nice and appreciated.
All right. Well, with that all sorted out and all the advice and all the reviews and previews we've got, I think that's going to be a wrap on our show this week. We look forward to seeing you next week to talk a little bit about how Gwinnett went, as well as our week 4 previews. But until then, good luck out there, PCH. I look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah. Say hi if you see us.
Yeah.
Yep.